Welcome to a joint meeting with Public Safety and the Budget Committee of Rutherford County. And we will handle Public Safety's business at the beginning. And the first order of business, I'll entertain a motion on the minutes from the past meeting. Got a motion? Do we have a second? All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? Would like to mention right now that we have these microphones, and to use them, especially later when we get into the budget process, that we're going to have to turn on the mics and hold them. Even if they pick up when we lay them down, we're going to have a lot of static. So we'll go. The first item on the agenda is the consent agenda. And hopefully everyone's looked at it. And
Mr. Chairman, I think Mr. Gregory, with pause, has a request and move that we withdraw the pause report from the consent agenda and add it onto the regular agenda.
Okay. You heard the request. All in favor?
Yes, I believe EMS has a request also. I move that we remove that also.
Okay. Already have one on the agenda from juvenile detention. So do we have approval of the consent agenda minus those three departments?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? Okay. Well, let's go then, and let's go next to juvenile detention. We have Ms. Duke.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It'll be a little difficult holding this and flipping papers. Do we want to go over the reports or just the contract?
If anything significant this month on the report?
I think what everybody would be most interested in knowing is that Perry County has paid in full. But beyond that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
That's always nice to hear, Ms. Duke. You had a chance to look at the report for juvenile detention. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the report.
And a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you. Okay, and you've got a budget request.
Well, what I have is a contract with the Tennessee Department of Children's Services. This is for detention beds. This is almost the exact same contract as we had last year. It is so that they could, if they choose to spend a total of $180,698.70, 70 cents, which is $132.38 per day per child. And they just want to reestablish this contract with us again this year. This coming fiscal year, excuse me.
So it is basically the same as last year? Nothing
Yes.
different? Okay. So you heard the request. Legals all in favor of this because it's like the rest of them? Okay.
Yes. I'm sorry? Please, yes.
Got a motion. Do we have a second? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Next we'll have pause. Mr. Gregory. First we'll go over the report.
be happy to go through the report, or if there's nothing significant, if you'd just like to look over it, your choice.
Anybody had a chance to look at his report? Is there any questions? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve this report.
Got a motion? Do we have a second? Good motion is second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed. Okay. The grant is that he's requesting to apply for is on your computer if you want to take a quick look at it, and we'll ask Mr. Gregory to explain it.
As you recall, I've spoken about us being on the rescue wagon program through PetSmart Charities, where they're transporting animals from our shelter to areas that are in need of adoptable animals. This was an invitational grant through that program for the spay and neuter of up to 300 cats, along with a little bit of money for marketing and materials. The timeline for applying for this invitational grant was very short. I got approval back from them this morning that it's been approved for $10,000 with no county match. I'm asking if you all would go ahead and approve it so I can start the process. I didn't want to be another month out having to come to you in May and then waiting until June for commission approval. The money will be broken down into $9,600 to our drugs and medical supply line item, $250 to our advertising line item, and $150 to our $499 line for those supplies.
And this is very similar to the one we just recently had.
The only difference in this one versus the last one was open for anyone to apply. This is only for Rescue Wagon partners, and like I said, it was an invitational grant. They asked us to apply and said, hey, you're going to get some money as long as you apply.
So it's a good thing to help us out with strays. I guess that's the best way to put it. So I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion, we have a second. Second. Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed. Mr. Nunley. Ambulance service. All right. You want to take us through the report first?
Want me to go all the way through the report or just the significant portions? There's 2 or 3 significant items that I might mention in the report. Number one is the number of calls continues to go up at a pretty rapid rate. Consequently, the response time is going up too. I attribute that to the number of calls and the number of times that our ambulances have to respond out of their zone into other zones to make calls. And one other thing too is the severity of the calls seems to be going up. So I think that's the reason our response time is going up. We are concerned about it. We're making sure that there's everything that we can control on that is going to be taken care of. I think that will be affected in the future with the addition of the ambulance station at Burton Street. So that's one thing. The other thing is actually a good thing. Our collections are going up as well and are approaching $7 million, we think, in projections, and we hope that that holds true so that we can reach that amount. That's a significant number higher than anticipated. And that's about it for the significant things. The number of out-of-zone calls was 841. The total number of calls was 2,507, and the total mileage driven was 44,406.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Nunley? Okay, I'll entertain a motion on the report. Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We need to add $50,000 to our overtime pay line item, and we need to add $5,000 to our supervisor's payroll line item. The reason for the shortfall in the overtime line item has been several things. Primarily, we have an unexpected abnormally number of people taking Family Medical Leave Act this year that was not anticipated. The other thing is that we've had some vacancies in our paraprofessional line item that have been backfilled by overtime. We would like to correct that by taking $33,000 from the paraprofessional line item and $15,000 from our dispatch payroll line item and $2,000 from our office payroll line item. That total is also $50,000. The $5,000 in the supervisor's payroll is caused because the payroll was changed before it went to final approval on the budget, but the number in the payroll was not changed, so we had to correct that. We can take that money from office payroll as well. We had some changes in our office payroll this year that permitted us to save quite a bit of money there. One other thing that I would just mention is that we charge for special event coverage within the county, and some of you commissioners that have been on the Public Safety Committee in years past realize that we used to transfer that money that we received for those special events into our overtime payroll because that's what we used to pay those people with. We have not done that in the past 2 years, but this year so far we have collected $65,529, which has gone into the ambulance service fund for that. And we're not asking to use that, but that's just for your information.
The rest of those items that you just mentioned, Mike, they're going to be okay through the rest of this year?
Yes.
And all of them came within your budget, which is a great thing to know in the end of April, correct? Okay. So you heard the request.
Move to approve the request.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item on the agenda has been requested to be postponed till the next month, and that's the alternative placement of DUI offenders. The company wants to look at it a little bit further before they present it to us. So we'll next look at rescheduling our next public safety meeting because of Memorial. That's when it would fall. And we have 2 open dates the week before. We did talk about May 18th. That's a Monday. Monday, May 18th, and Wednesday, May 20th. So the members of public safety, I guess let's say, does it matter? Or do you have? The 18th. Okay. You have a consensus? Nobody else? The 18th? We'll put it on May 18th, a week earlier. Okay. And now we get to the Mayor.
I've just been notified that the sheriff has been making corrections and amendments to his budget this afternoon, and they are still finishing printing this budget, so they'll be up here soon. So I don't know if you want to just go into a momentary recess until they reappear or not. Be your choice.
Well, gentlemen, we've got two committees here tonight. So, okay, we'll go ahead and do that first. All right.
Start with the amendments.
Are they on the iPad? Are they on the iPad, or do you? Okay. Go ahead.
Budget from various accounts to utilities.
Are they,
Third one is to fund unemployment expense for the remainder of the year. It's actually coming out of the sheriff's side unemployment compensation going into the detention unemployment compensation. And that's all. Well, we have, in the sheriff's side, from my understanding, we have unemployment that's going out. No. Well, I'm
but it's all three of them are items within your budget, the second and the third one. Okay. Okay.
Mayor, you have any idea?
I think the sheriff should answer this, but I don't think they have been opposing any unemployment compensation request.
Gentlemen, we have a couple options. We can make a motion to pass, to deny, or we can also have a motion to pass it on to budget with no recommendation to get, if we want to get the answer to the reasons why. But we need to do one of them.
The first one is to recognize additional funds received from the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force. It goes into overtime and related benefits. The second one is to transfer within our budget from various accounts to go into the utility account. Basically, we do not have enough money right now to finish out the year, and we tried to go and find the accounts that we can put into utilities. The third one is going from the sheriff's side unemployment compensation into the detention unemployment compensation.
Heard the request.
I
we have a
have a
motion?
question on that. On the unemployment, when someone submits for unemployment, is this a routine grant or
Government's a little different from private. You know, private enterprise, they pay a percentage of payroll, every payroll into the unemployment. Government is different. We pay when a claim is submitted. So the claims that have come through are on the jail side, and the budget for unemployment was put in the sheriff's side. So there is routinely unemployment claims throughout the year.
I don't disagree with that. Normally, unemployment compensation are for people who lost their jobs without any fault of their own. And I don't know of any of that kind of stuff going on. So that's
Well,
really my question.
okay, here's an example where it will come back. If somebody leaves our employ and and go to another employer, if they are let go from that second one, they will come back to us. Even though they left the other one, they will rotate down, and the county will be responsible to pay.
Isn't there an appeals process, though, that we can go through?
There is an appeals process, but what she's saying is pretty automatic, but I think that's a nominal amount of what this $17,500 is. So I think one would have to look at the individual claims and see if they were discharged for a reason or terminated for a reason, and if unemployment was allowed when they may have been discharged for cause.
The utilities, is that mainly due to the water with the meters that were out? Okay.
We're going to be paying around $110,000 more this year than we did last fiscal year.
Water and sewage. You reviewed this, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir, I looked at them this afternoon. I think the first two are perfectly acceptable.
Right, the city, we don't need to pay the city of Murfreesboro a late charge. So.
The third one that you're talking about is unemployment? I move to approve the first two.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. Call the roll, please.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Do we have a motion on the third item, the unemployment?
Since the sheriff is here, I'd like a little clarification. Asking what that's for. Unemployment compensation is usually reserved for folks who are laid off or lose their job to no fault of their own. And I'm kind of wondering, we hadn't had any of that out the jail, have we? As a matter of fact, we're growing. Okay. Thank you.
Well, let's resolve the number number 3 budget item. We need one to either yay or nay. If we don't do anything with it, and it will stay approved by this, if it goes to the state unemployment compensation, we're still going to have to pay it. If we want to fight it, that's the other alternative. I'm not going to take one to just pass it to budget, I'll tell you that.
I'll make a motion to pass this along to budget with no recommendation.
Got a motion? Do we have a second? Motion denied for lack of a second. Just left afloat in cyberspace. Need to do one or the other.
Forward to budget with a negative recommendation.
And a motion is second. Any further discussion? A yes vote is for a refusal of the request. Further requests, any further questions on the report? We have a motion. We have a second. Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The last item tonight is the Sheriff's Department's budget request. And as this is passed out, as we go through it, we'll go through it with requests starting with their source of nature of revenue sheet. And anytime anyone has a question, whether it's public safety or whether it's the budget committee, feel free to go ahead and ask it. Don't wait. The budget committee members don't need to wait. And the other thing is, turn in the book, etc. If you talk loud so everybody can hear you, so you might not have to use the mics.
Okay, we'll start with the revenue this evening. I don't know if you want me to go line by line, but I can do that fairly quickly. Service of process commission, $75,000. Telephone video visitation commissions, $200,000. Sex offender registry, $9,000. State of Tennessee inmate reimbursement, $2,701,000. Contributions.
Stop a second. The state.
Huh?
What population are you using? 200 a day from the state? Is that the figure?
That is correct.
Okay.
Contributions from other government agencies, $5,000. Drug fund, $250,000. Commissary sales, $200,000. Inmate Social Security, $50,000. Domestic violence grant, $58,426. Board of Education overtime reimbursement, $120,000. TBI criminal background fees, $25,000. Drug court fines, $215,000, and salary supplements, $132,000, for a total of $4,040,426. Yes, sir.
I don't have it with me, but I have looked at these revenues, and I've looked at all these revenues, and they look comparable to what we're getting this year.
So this year, would they like that bottom line figure as well?
Yes. Yes, I mean that's our budget. I don't think we haven't amended any of these revenues yet, so it's pretty much. I mean, I bet you that's going to be it. I know there's two lines in here that relate to the drug court, the drug control budget, and that's the drug court fines, and then the 250. Yeah, drug fund. That's from the confiscated properties that we get to keep. So yes, I mean this is very comparable to what we get this year. Yes. One in particular. There's one, two. Okay, one in particular. This the inmate reimbursement, the 2.7. We budgeted $2,360,000 for the current year, but it is on track to be $2.7 million.
I was just handed a note. Please use the microphones because otherwise you will not be heard at all on the TV station. So we'd be playing sort of like Charlie Chaplin tonight, okay? So please use your microphones. And Captain Spence, could you tell me, what is Service of Process Commission?
The Service of Process Commission is basically the commission that we receive for serving papers.
We have any questions on the sources of revenue?
Okay, if y'all are ready, we will move on to the sheriff's office budget. So y'all want to go through every individual line under salaries, or?
Well, pretty much the salaries are cut and dry.
If you want to, we could look at a couple of highlights I know that may be of interest. The salary supplement line item is $132,000, and that is the supplement received for our post-certified officers for their training. We get that money back from the state. It's in revenue as well. Overtime for this year, we've requested $915,500.
Can you give us the numbers along with it to make it easier to find? Imagine you know.
I can. That would be 187. For $915,500.
If anyone has a question as we get to it, please feel free to ask. Well,
The reason that this is $70,000 more is because it's coming out of the drug fund.
We see several changes to salaries, but could you tell us the change in the level of employment, new positions, things like that?
In this presentation, it's no new employees, if that's what you're
That's what I'm
asking.
asking.
It's pretty much with the same bodies that's there.
We'll have at the very end some new positions that we'll be requesting, but we wanted to go through this first, and then at the very end of the sheriff's office side, we'll present what we're requesting at that time.
okay, so you're saying it's showing with the sheriff's recommendation to be 80,000 less than last year in overtime as it's been amended.
As amended.
But as it was approved of 845, so this is 70,000 more. Now, and then you mentioned the drug fund. Okay, now, is there going to be some included in the drug fund also, or some request for overtime, or what? Okay, what I'm saying is how are you going to reconcile spending already is amended on $945,000 this year and then cut it last year, the next year, $994,000 this year and cut it for next year.
That question. I was going to say that, just to remind you that when you get to the debt service, the drug fund, you'll see a transfer for overtime to come into the general fund to pay this additional $70,000. But to your question, I'll leave it to them.
You understand what I'm saying? It's amended this year for $994,000 of overtime in the sheriff's side, and as it's been expended as of now, $941,000, and yet the request for next year is $915,000.
We've had some pretty big investigations going on that's tied up a lot of resources, and right now we're hoping we don't have those investigations go on.
Another thing that would go along with that, the ambulance service mentioned they had a lot of FMLA this last year. Have y'all had it?
As we reported in the past, we've had a tremendous amount of FMLA this year and in the previous years, but it seems like it's going up every year. Hopefully we don't have that in the future, but we don't have a crystal ball.
So, Ms. Nolan, so then you can explain FMLA, why that could account for overtime, correct? Well, it's if they don't have leave time, sick leave or something like this, they can still go and spend time with an ill family member or whatever, and then it's got to be covered by people that we already have, correct?
12 weeks in the federal law that they get, even if they don't have or sick time available to them, then they have the time off, protected leave.
I have a question. On the line for dispatchers, radio operators, I see that shows a decrease. And just from, am I correct there? Am I following the right line across? $19,252 decrease, is on the right line?
Not a reduction of bodies, but as people turn over, you will have people who are leaving out at a higher rate than what you are coming in, and we budget the bodies that are there at the time.
Based on current experience?
Yes, where they are.
Spending less money, because listening to the radio system every day, as I do, most of the time the dispatchers are slammed, so you're not cutting any bodies. You're just anticipating, due to the inexperience right now and the turnover of spending less. Okay, thank you.
We had a couple to retire, so by them retiring, bringing on new ones that are actually salaries a little less.
On the overtime, is it paid current? Is this fairly well current?
Any other questions? All right, I'm going to move on to 196, in-service training. And that is basically same as last year, $160,000. 307, communication, $333,900.
Go back to overtime. Okay. I want to go back to overtime. The numbers, too, that have amended up through the year has also been the result of grants received. The Governor Highway Safety grants for the stops and thaws thing. So that is part of the amended budget up, and that is not reflected into next year. We will amend that as the monies come in.
What is the decrease in communication?
Right now, what has happened over the last few months with the radio, we have been, with the radios, how they've been able to upgrade the radio systems. We have some towers, several towers, that we have been able to disable those circuits. So at this point, if we do not have to re-enable those circuits or add any additional fiber, this is where we see the decrease. $312 contracts with private agencies, $223,184. $317. Well, I tried. The increase there, of course, that is we've got the dry cleaning contract. I believe that's also a tower site contract. On top of that, basically, we have added the contract for service for a SOMS, meaning our current sheriff's office management software, for a private agency to maintenance that software.
And we moved this out of what line?
We moved it out of 317. This past 2 years, we've used SourceLogic. At this point, we more than likely will continue to use SourceLogic, but regardless of whether we get new software or not, our current software has to be maintained. So that is your increase there.
Vince, I heard you say there was a decrease in line 317, but I see a $22,684 increase.
We moved Psalms out of that line item, and she's got a list of stuff that they put back in that line item as well. So it was a house cleaning thing to move it out of that line item and into another line item. But then when they have their OIT, once we get to 317, you'll see OIT, see list, which I don't know if we added the list to each one of your packets.
The individual list is not in there, but we can get that for you. It's just a very long list of support service contracts.
So what specifically is costing us $82,000 more than what we had last year in there? Is it just this software, the majority of it?
With regards to 312 in contracts with private agencies,
How much is the software out of that 82,000?
it's strictly maintenance. It's strictly software support.
Well, I'm asking for a dollar figure, not what it is.
84,000 is what we have planned at this time.
Thank you.
I'm a little confused. So it came out of 317,
Correct.
but there's not 80, but there's still not a reduction in 317. And I'm looking up and down the list, and I don't see a substantial reduction anywhere. Is 84,000? Was that a significantly less dollar amount in the previous years?
No, we've had an increase in other software and support contracts
In
for this coming year.
$80,000 range?
Quite a few.
Okay, it's just not all adding up to me, to tell you.
Well, I think they need to go ahead and go to the next line item. That $732,000 they're asking for is new software. Is that correct, Ms. Spence?
Sure.
A major increase in a completely new system there. That $84,000 they're talking about is just to maintain the current system until such time as a new system might be put in place.
Which line item again?
$709. Moved it to 709, which
My mistake. The copy I have is last Thursday's version. They have moved the big money down to 709. So the 709 is the software that's new.
Well, I have to ask, if you were able to get this new software, will there be a reduction? You said you were still maintaining the old software. do you anticipate that the cost of that's going away if you were able to get the new? And if so, how much?
Well, where the difference in lies as far as in 317, and I can get you a copy of that. I have it in my other book. There are numerous types of software contracts, including several that came on this year.
Is this the software we were talking about in warrants?
Yes, in the 709, down at the bottom, the big one.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
To deal with the warrants, the problem we're having over there currently.
Yes, that's the RMS system.
In the warrant section.
Yes,
Yes.
the records management software,
Records, okay.
which is records, warrants, civil, criminal.
I know where you're talking about.
But the SOM system we've been doing for the past few years, ever since I took office, we've had to pay, who is it? Source Logic to maintain. Ever since we created our own IT department, Source Logic has had to come in, and they basically keep it going. No updates, no nothing. They're just sustaining the bleeding is what they're doing, and that's what that SOM's maintenance is.
So let me get this straight in my head about this new software. All of us have got a bad taste in our mouth about software around here, and it's nothing to do with your office at all. It's just software in general for other agencies here. But is this something that you anticipate bidding out, or is this something you've already gone through on this process for this particular vendor? Or is this just one vendor that you say you've got to have?
For the Source Logic, for the new one.
The RMS. It's the same system you just approved in the last county commission meeting, the grant from the 911 board. Yeah, it's TriTech. Y'all approved that that we got from the 911 board, and this is additional modules to it. The RMS system we're putting in this year's budget in line item 709, and then next year we'll come back and put in a JMS side of it, the jail management side. So we started with the CAD system. You just approved that the last county commission meeting for the hardware, and 911. We got a grant for the sheriff's office for the software for the CAD system, for dispatch and for the fire department as well. And then we want to put in the RMS side of this, records management, for this year, and it's going to take us till probably November, December, once we start this project, and then next year come back and put in the JMS side. So this is a multi-year project. And this is the same system that Murfreesboro City has been using for years. It's been tested, tried and true. Yeah, EMS just recently bought it as well. The only thing is no one has had the jail management side of it locally. We've talked to several people that have had it, but it's actually going to tie us in. It'll tie Murfreesboro and the Sheriff's Office, Murfreesboro Fire, Rutherford County Fire, and EMS all together, and they'll be able to look at all of our systems and all of our cards that are being produced, and we'll be able to look at their stuff as well. So it's the first time ever that we're all coming together as a county.
And Commissioner P., the young man that's just been brought up there, he's the IS supervisor, John Frost. He's what makes it go. He's forgotten more about computers than I've ever seen.
Is he from Eagleville?
I'll not get into that, but but he knows what he's talking about, and the system they're talking about right there. Several of the commissioners have seen this and what they're doing there.
I didn't recognize the name. That's why I was asking, and I do recall some discussions that we'd had at budget when we saw this. So I appreciate you reminded me. Thank you.
Okay, if y'all don't have any other questions about 317, at least for right now, we'll move on to 320, Dues and memberships, $12,039. 334, maintenance agreements, $84,586. 336, repairs and maintenance of equipment, $86,900.
Captain Spence, I got to go back to 317. I'm sorry, but maybe one of these. I've got this sheet, and it is, and this is the one that came today because I found the one that I got Thursday. And that sheet is saying for 317, $932,000 for the sheriff's request. 54110-317. Is that the old sheet?
That is the old sheet.
So are all these old sheets that came today?
I thought the sheets got replaced.
Mr. Chairman, they must be mixed because mine have got the new numbers.
Okay, for 317? Okay.
I've got the new numbers on
The
317.
new numbers on 317 should have you at 3,000 under the IA background checks. You should have 3,000, and under IS requests, you should have 220,184.
I have 991. And so that comes out from a far cry from 223. So
What you're going to see now is a listing of services in the 317 line item. We have had a couple of, I guess as you would say, substantial increases. One being, if you'll notice on there, under Datamax, you'll see it's where it says NCIC hosting. Our patrol officers now have the capability in their car from their laptops to run criminal histories. That is a cost that is between us and Datamax. Datamax actually hosts a service which prevents us from having to take a lot of excessive security measures. Along with that, another increase has been we finally completed the outfitting of the rest of our patrol units with the rocket modems, and those rocket modems are basically the wireless hotspots for those patrol cars. That's what their laptops run off of. That's where they get their Wi-Fi from. So we were able to finish outfitting the rest of those units. So where you see utility associates, there are fees associated with those devices for configuration and support services.
let's ask one more on the two that it's, and I guess this now is to the one it switched to from 312 to 317, and that's, you talked about the RMS system. Now, isn't there a way records management, and it houses the data. And when we took the tour down there a few weeks ago, and because, well, it's cramped, I guess the best way to put it. But don't we have something in the Register of Deeds that we can put these paper files, et cetera, that we have on microfilm or something over there? Don't they have that capability to do? Or is that something totally different that can't be done through you?
I know the Register of Deeds, she can microfilm some things, but most all of our records, we have to keep a paper file for 100 years. That's what the law states. There was one day the mayor called me and asked me about that, and we have no files that go back to past 1976. So when I was asked about seeing if there was a way to microfilm and purge some of that stuff, we're only about 39 years into 100 years worth of building documents according to the state law. We have microfilmed some things that we can, and we try to microfilm as much as we can with the personnel that we have. That there comes another thing, because a lot of times some of the part-time personnel we have, they'll scan it into the system, they'll put it on a disc and send it over to get microfilmed when we can do that. But a lot of the RMS will be warrants, paper warrants, and we've done one purge since I've been in office where we went through and we purged some old warrants from the 70s, 80s, and even early 90s. But we haven't had the time to purge in the past 2 years. But we try to do that as much as we can as well.
So you're saying the state requires us to keep warrants, a paper copy for 100 years?
Not warrants itself. There's a time limit on actual warrants. We have to go to the judge, and you have to go through each and every individual warrant, and he'll dismiss certain type of warrants after so long. But all the TIBRs, all the arrest reports, we have to keep, for 100 years. That's why, if right across the street from the clerk's office, we have next to the Moab building, we've got one of those buildings that's full of documents. We also have the basement of the old health department full of documents. We have every nook and cranny at the sheriff's office full of documents. That's something that we're going to have to get into here later about what we do, because archives they don't want all these documents. They can't handle these documents. But that's kind of
ask another one, since we're on it, maybe, and maybe this is not the time or the place for it, but have you gone to the state and asked them to look into coming up into the 21st century?
The Records Commission has gone to the state several times. My people have gone. It's a state law that goes back. The history of it, from what I was told, it goes back into genealogy. That's way above me. That's the state, and they don't plan on changing the law anytime soon.
We're going to run out of room. We're going to build a building just to house that, is what you're saying sometime.
The county's going to have to build a building just to house our documents eventually. But that's another discussion.
Yeah, the records management system, isn't the purpose of that to primarily, from my experience in other locales, to allow quick access to the information? In other words, was a person arrested for, say, a sex offense 10 years ago, but then then released, and then anything? I know that the city of Smyrna keeps records way on back. Even though all the arrest reports and so on are online, whether those are, any case was actually prosecuted over it or not, because there's a lot of information that becomes important to law enforcement, even though in the future, even though there may not been a conviction or anything, the behavior of that person allows access to the officer in the field and so on. Is that the real purpose of the record management system?
That is correct. The records management that we're looking at is a tie-in to the CAD portion, the computer-aided dispatch that we got the grant money from. Records management, basically, if you want to think of it this way, it encumbers not only the warrants, records for arrest reports. You're looking at CID, that's detectives. You're looking at the narcotics division. You're looking at HR. They have information stored in that. It's basically everything that is not CAD and not jail management related. It encumbers basically the rest of the sheriff's office as that's concerned. But the way that it ties in together between the different modules in Murfreesboro, we have that interconnectivity. Say Murfreesboro has pulled over this gentleman before, right? And we pull them over in our jurisdiction. The gentleman has a note under his name that he is liable to fight with an officer. It's officer safety, it's public safety. But it's real-time information to the officer out in the field. Gang member terrorists, etc. Yeah.
Okay, any further questions on 317? Let's see, I think we left off at 336. Maintenance and repairs and service of equipment, 86,900. 338, maintenance, repair, and service of vehicles, 150,000. 348, postage, 16,000. 349, printing, stationery, and forms, 13,000. 351, rentals, 3,180. 357, veterinary services, 6,500. 399, other contracted services, 5,000. 401, animal food and supplies, 9,625. 411, data processing supplies, 12,000. 425, gasoline, 850,000. 429, instructional supplies.
We've transferred money out of gasoline, I believe, the last couple of months, or at least a couple of times this year. And I think it's the same budget request as we had last year. Can't we knock that down some?
We figured that the best thing to do, because you don't know the price of gas, it's down today, up tomorrow, that we would just stick with what we had last year. If it does go down, or if we spend less, then we always get to return that back to undesignated. So that was the will that we came up with. Is we don't know if come October that gas spikes and it goes back up to $4 a gallon, then we'll end up running out. So we figure if we stay at the same as previous years, then if we have leftover, then it'll always just go back to undesignated.
It got a little heartburn in budgeting something that might happen versus might not happen. It could be that it goes down again and stays down for the whole year. I'm thinking that that's maybe too much money to budget. The statement that it can go back into the general fund is nice to say, Sheriff, but just like the past few months, you've been transferring money out of that into other accounts, and I'd rather see the thing actually budgeted to what the experts are believing that it will be. And I'm thinking that it may not be that we need that much in the budget for next year, and we ought to look at taking that down some. If it does go back up, just as you've done in the past, you've come to us and said, I need more money for gasoline, and I'd rather do it like that and put this in undesignated fund balance and have you request money
But
out
then
of that.
please give us your recommendation, sir.
I'm just asking. I'm asking a question. And you answered the question as if that's what we had last year and that's what we want to do again this year, right?
Well, because we're expecting gas to probably go back up come winter time. Yes. Again, I don't have a crystal ball. That's kind of what we're forecasting, preparing for.
Well, I think what the commissioner's saying is something that, like If I gave my wife $500 and said it's yours, she'd spend $500. If I gave her $250 and say that's yours, she'd spend $250. Okay? That's the point.
I'm not sure what the right figure is. I'm really not, but I'm thinking that it needs to be less than that 850. And you know, my guess is somewhere around 750 or something like that. 700. And once again, as happened in the past, and I remember your department coming up when it did spike and go up at $4 an hour, and we're out of money and need some more, and you got it at that particular time. So I'd rather see it budgeted for something.
That's fine. We'll go with 750 if that's what you would like.
Joe, you just made a recommendation. What do you think? Mayor, have you taken a look at this?
The mayor's already taken a look at every one of these line items. Of course, a few of them have been changed by tonight, but you will have the mayor's recommendation when it comes to budget, and there will be substantial changes across the board. I don't know which line items yet, but I will have an opportunity to give you my number at an appropriate time. 12 months amortized on through April the 1st is $540,000.
What now?
You look at what they've expended through 9 months and amortize that to 12 months, it's $540,000.
Got a question. Mayor, don't you usually make a recommendation before it goes to public safety, or do you always make your recommendation between public safety and budget?
We're this go around, and we're trying to get to this process whereby I don't actually make recommendations at the committee level. My recommendations will be made at the budget level.
That might have played into our decision on whether budget was to participate in this meeting or not. If I didn't realize that before, I thought we were going to be looking at the mayor's recommendation tonight, but I learned a little something tonight.
Well, I would be in no position to make a recommendation because I haven't had the data. I had some of the data, but it's changed since Thursday.
Well, and I don't mean to slam the sheriff, but for us to sit here and come in halfway through the meeting with the budget that's just changed this afternoon, I mean, unless I've got a pretty good explanation, I want to know why. We all knew this meeting was going to happen weeks and weeks ago, and then why has the mayor not had a chance to look at this budget for, say, a week or two and have his recommendation tonight when the budget committee has made the effort to be here and hopefully read this? Because now I thought we were going to see the whole thing and be able to act on it in fairly short order once we got the budget, but we're going to go back over the whole budget again because we're going to the mayor's recommendation at that point in time. I know I'm getting a little off subject here, but there's a bit of frustration with this budget member anyway. I can't speak for the other 6.
Well, I think we can make recommendations here. Maybe some of them aren't what the mayor would have made, and that gives him something to go on. But the department's report to public safety, it was known in January. Which ones were going to be in February, which ones were going to be in March, and in April was going to be the sheriff. Because it's more than all the rest of them combined. If someone wants to make a recommendation to change the gasoline, feel free to do so.
Yeah, I'll make a recommendation to change that number to 700,000 based on this year, and then, as always, we will make sure that the patrol vehicles stay on the road.
Yeah, you've heard the motion made. Do we have a second or?
I'll second.
Second. Is there any further discussion on it?
Before you go on, we went by item 401. For the last 2 years, we've been budgeting $9,625, and it seems like every time we've amended that by a few $1,000s. I know this year, about 2 or 3 months ago, we had to amend that, and I do know for a fact about 3 weeks ago we received a donation for 2 more pretty nice animals that's been added to that. Why don't we make it what it is? Okay. I just wanted to be sure on that because I do know we have to keep adding that to it every time.
I believe we also, of course, you'll see it next month, but when we get donations, just like you saw the other night, the $25,000 donation for the 2 dogs, I believe that's what it was off the top of our head. So when we get those donations, we just amend it into it.
Okay, next, 429, instructional supplies and materials. 18,500. 431, law enforcement supplies, 85,000. 435, office supplies, 50,000. 437, periodicals, 9,000. 451, uniforms, 150,800. 453, vehicle parts, 200,000. 499, other supplies and materials, 40,400. 505, judgments, 26,000. 599, other charges, 13,500. 708, communications equipment, 180,000. I stopped. I knew you were going to ask.
Right. What new equipment are we looking at there? That's a $125,000 increase.
As you can see in your book, the Motorola APX 7000 tri-band radio, we've spent roughly, I think, $400 and some odd thousand over the past year on those radios, and they asked for $360,000 for the patrol division for the other half of those radios. I cut it down to 180 to get a quarter. 75% of the officers will have those, and then hopefully next year we'll do the other 25% of the officers, and then start doing radios that need to be fixed or repaired at that time. But each radio is roughly, I want to think, about $7,000 a radio, a handheld radio. Those are they're tri-band. Murfreesboro, Smyrna, Laverne are all going 7-800, and these will be able to talk to them. It's the same radio as they use as well.
If you'd like a little bit more detail.
Well, how many will this buy?
Oh, okay, hold on. Captain Spence he purchases those, so we'll let him explain.
This will buy us 25 radios. Like the sheriff said, other agencies have these radios with 700, 800 megahertz. We're currently on UHF radio. If something happened, we couldn't communicate with them, and we currently are on Vertex. And these radios are getting out better than our current radios, and we're going to pass our current radios back to detention, which have radios that were not repairable, so they're obsolete. So the patrol radios will be passed to detention radios area. Yes, sir. We currently need 47, but we cut it back to 25 radios. But we're slow walking it. But
I might say something that from a standpoint of keeping up with technology and keeping equipment that's not in too much of a disrepair. We should be replacing these handhelds every 5 to 7 years. By the time it stays out here, I mean, that's the recommendations from most of the major groups. So I think we'll be seeing this come back, periodically. This is not, if we're gonna stay with current technology, then we're gonna have to fund it every so often. This will get it a long way, and then I think as we, so many years from down the road, 5, 6 years down the road, we're going to be coming back and, replacing these radios and so on.
Yes, sir, and they actually got the officer down button. Also, we push them, and it lets the dispatch know where the officer's at if they get hurt. Thank you.
These are for patrol use, outside deputies, not inside the jail. Inside the jail, we don't need a $7,000 radio.
So in some of the past discussions we've had, you told us we've got like 9 or 10 patrolmen taking care of the whole county?
Yes.
On shift?
Yes.
Could you get by with less share radios, or is that something you can't do?
No.
Why not?
Because,
If we share radios, let's say if we had a tornado hit right now, not all the officers would have radios. We get called out. It's best that each officer had their own radios.
So out of 47, how do you decide which one to put 25?
Yes, sir. Just to save money and just baby walk it, and then
How do you determine who got the 25?
we're doing it by seniority. Yes, sir.
How many of them have we purchased so far, roughly?
35.
Okay. 709, data processing equipment, $882,690. Go ahead, Commissioner Shane.
Well, I'm just going to ask, do we have we sought bids at all on those, whether they're not necessarily hard and fast, of course, but to come up with the figure for the systems that we're talking about? Well, one of them,
We have
700 and some thousand of that goes to a certain item, correct?
That is correct. It's for one item to Tritech software, which, again, this piece is the records management piece. So this is basically phase 2 of 3 phases of replacing our entire department software. The first piece being CAD, which is our dispatch, and this is the next piece.
Friend to come up and tell us how I'm sure he's the one that you asked roughly how much it's going to cost, right? And where did he get it from?
I apologize. Can you repeat it again? I was walking up, sir.
How you arrived at the figure? It's not something you go out to someplace and just say, "Oh, see it on the shelf" or something. I mean, you got to work with somebody to come up with a figure.
Right.
Has that been done?
Right. Our division has, for the last year and a half now, we've looked over probably about 10 different vendors. With the amount of users that we have, end users at the sheriff's office, because we're a pretty large agency. What are we in the state? The third largest full-service sheriff's office. Third largest full-service sheriff's office in the state. But based on our user count and how many concurrent users that we have logging into the system at the same point in time, that's where there's the numbers are high, basically. It allows for. And that number may end up going down as far as like your annual service. Once we get to that point, in the next 5 years, you'll probably be seeing like the full annual agreement that we pay to the company. But that won't be till about 5 years from now. The idea that we're asking for the records management for this budget year is we're we're making the grand assumption right now, because you know how software is as far as implementations. Once we get into next budget year, towards the end of it, we'll be ready to begin implementation of the records management system. And then after that point, for the 16-17, we're going to request the jail management portion. After that, we would have completely, basically just replaced our current software that we've been running since 1998. So it's been a year-long progress looking at different vendors. We had a top 3 that we were looking at, and they were comparable in price. But after speaking with the mayor and Murfreesboro Police Department with their success with this software that they're using, we decided to go that route. It would cut down on the interface costs as well.
This 600 and plus $1,000 is we're getting into our records now, right? That's correct. And this is an expense that what will be the reoccurring expense on this as time goes by? While you're looking that up, Sheriff, you may know this. You've already chosen the company or the process that you want to use. How was that chosen?
Murfreesboro will be back up for us with their new facility, and it's really going to expand Rutherford County and their public safety, and that's ultimately what we're all here for, is for the public safety.
Is TriTech the company that used to be Visionaire?
Yes, sir.
They bought out Visionaire.
Bought out Visionaire.
Yeah, TriTech was a larger scale agency, software vendor, and Visionaire was a medium to smaller size. So basically, they bought them out, took the best of both worlds.
Visionaire has been in the business for quite some time.
This is just draft as of right now, because obviously this is based on how many users that we got, but making the assumption that the records management portion annual maintenance fees will be about $63,000. Again, that's just draft 1. And that was back to, I was listening earlier, one of the questions that y'all had about the 80-something thousand for the service. We're going to attempt to transfer as much as we can to the new system, but the data is basically unreliable in the current system. You put trash in, you get trash out scenario. So we're going to try to do what we can, but we'll be starting pretty fresh as far as our data input's concerned. As far as the migration of the data, TriTech.
So, since you're having to maintain the old system and you don't want to use corrupt files in the new system, how long will you have to run both systems? Like, how long are we going to be paying $1,000 to keep that active?
We're taking a big guess with this. The older the the older the software gets, the less that we'll probably have to retrieve those files. And we also estimate that the error rates will go down based on you're looking up records versus entering data into that old system. We have more records when you enter data into that system versus retrieving data from that system. So we forecast that the error rates will actually go down in the old system once we stop entering data into it. But we do have to maintain those files. In the next couple of years, we could also probably utilize the services of the vendor that we're using currently to hopefully clean up some of that and maybe eventually migrate that into the new system as well.
That's indefinitely.
Correct. Some of it is.
That. I know you said this is all a long window, long process. Where are we at on that, and when will it be activated?
We got the obviously we got the funding approved. I've forwarded on to the county attorney, and he's sent it on to a third party to review the contract and make sure it's in line. Murfreesboro Police Department, since this isn't basically a intergovernmental agreement between Murfreesboro City, they have to review their side as well. They're also getting out of this grant money, they're also getting an upgrade to the current level of what we're going to be installing in our dispatch.
I guess the reason I ask is because I don't want to repeat mistakes that we're experiencing now in other parts of county government and taking on too much too fast. And so that's why I'm curious to know how much energy and attention do we need to devote just to CAD till we get that up and get it right before we tackle anything else?
That's the thought process on that. We are going to hit CAD first and make sure it's completely working and good, and then hopefully by that point in time we can begin the thought process of implementing records management into that, and then the jail after that in the next budget year.
So I guess that's why I'm asking about this coming fiscal year. Do we need the RMS this year if we're just now going to be implementing CAD this year?
We're guessing it once we get started on CAD, probably hopefully within the next month. That's when they forecasted it. Hopefully the next 9 months it'll be fully implemented. So we're looking at a 9-month window. We could obviously...
If we waited and funded RMS in the following budget year, we're not that far behind.
16, 17, if it meets the 9-month window, then that's correct.
And 716, law enforcement equipment. $265,090. Are you going to ask questions? If you are, I'm going to bring this one back up.
Well, it's just a simple one. Isn't there more places that you can get money from for law enforcement equipment? And you're the federal government sends us money sometimes, right? And that can be used for anything dealing with law enforcement as such.
And I can assure you that they research every grant possible to purchase for funding for law enforcement equipment. They look at...
mine is don't we get it, the special asset forfeiture fund? Because I've seen it come through budgets several times, and public safety several times through the year. You get monies for that, and it can be used for the various kinds.
Those funds aren't necessarily guaranteed. So in certain aspects of what they need for law enforcement equipment, those would have to be budgeted so that they can be purchased. And if you'd like to know, you want to know what?
No, I'm just thinking it sounds like another time that I would rather it, because every year I see monies coming in that way. I think we had a small one tonight that budget amendment that came in with $8,000 or $9,000. It went to overtime or something like that from it. And and periodically there's more monies that come in throughout the year. And I just like to see this what it was last year, and then if a request and you get low and some of that money comes in, you say that's what you have basically can decide wherever you want to put it. The department can when it comes in. Is that not correct? Okay. So what I'd like to see is 200,000 there like it was last year. But I'll let someone else make the motion.
Let me check with the one that actually prepared those figures.
What we're going to do with this money is we got 59 ballistic vests to expire this coming up budget year, which is going to be $30,090. And then the 200,000 is going to be ammunition. We estimated we're going to be using. We're expecting a big jump in ammunition coming up, and then we have 2 more dual-purpose K9s that's going to need to be retired. They're coming up on 10 years old, so the money is going to be needed for this coming up budget for the K9s, ammunition, and the ballistic vest that's going to expire for the officers.
Well, let me throw one back at you then from that standpoint.
Yes, sir.
But so that means if we get $65,090 more in the special fund, that it can go back into something else besides law enforcement equipment. And it can go into other things, but, you know, but you're going to use it still for whatever you deem you need it at that time, is what I'm saying. And I'm saying that these monies could go into this for the ammunition that you extra or whatever, as opposed.
Narcotics guys use that money to go back into different things within their budget to do different investigations, to buy some equipments that we can't really talk about that they use for their investigations. And that's where we use that money in some of those costs that they have. And that's why we've never used these monies for this type thing ever. You know, that's why the drug fund, you know, we did have those positions budgeted, and by the grace of God, y'all all budgeted those positions, and we've been using any and all monies that we can, working with the mayor on another project to purchase some things with the mayor's help, and that's where those monies are going, but then also for those investigations that they're doing, and they're doing some pretty high-tail investigations lately.
And Commissioners, majority of this money out of this line item is going to go to ammunition. $210,000 is going towards ammunition.
I see your original request was $380,000.
Yes, sir. We cut it back. We was looking at body cams, but the body cams was going to cost us more money on storage to store the videos and stuff, so we cut those out.
And you have vests that are expiring?
Yes, sir. We got 59 of them. I keep up a list of the expirations.
Right, of the timeline.
Yes, sir.
That becomes critical from an officer safety standpoint.
That's true.
No, ammunition cost is going up, and that affects training, and so you might just think of all those things.
Can I just give you one piece of feedback? When he can come up here and tell me line item by line item vests, you know, that level of detail, that increases my comfort level with the budget instead of just saying equipment, because I don't know what that is. And so anytime you can give us that level of detail, not only in this budget, but also in your monthly reports, I would love to see that level of detail.
Well, and that's why he's here. And if you'll notice out there, the rest of the sheriff's office, all of those have had input in their line items in their budget, so they are all prepared to answer any questions specifically that you may have.
Right, but you've already put this wonderful notebook together for me, but it doesn't give me a lot of detail. And so I'd like to see that detail in the notebook, just so that for quick reference, it might answer some of my questions, and you might not have to call them up here. And since while I have the microphone, I'll go ahead and ask my next one. We're going to go to vehicles next. It doesn't tell me how many vehicles.
If I understand from Sergeant Bailey, he is looking at 34 patrol vehicles.
And how many is that compared to the total fleet? I don't know how many we have total.
Sergeant Bailey's coming up.
Hello. What was the question now?
How many cars do we have in our total fleet?
Our total fleet, active cars, we've already got about 175. Now we've got quite a few cars to dispose of that we hadn't sold yet that need to go with the old Crown Vics. And they were still sitting over at the jail.
The ones in operation, how many do you have in operation that you're actively in use?
About 120. And
was her estimation correct? 34?
yes, ma'am. that's 34 completely built. That's equipment and all.
And we do have a list here, if you'd like to see it, of all of our mileage on all of our vehicles.
Yes.
Sergeant Bailey, when you say completely built, that includes the cost of the vehicle, all the upfitting equipment such as console, screens, and protective equipment for officer safety, lights, siren, communications equipment, and everything that's fixed in the vehicle, right?
Yeah, yes, sir. It's a turnkey operation. You get it and go. That's everything.
Any other questions for Sergeant Bailey? Yes, sir. 718, 1,500,000.
If I'm reading this right, was $1 million for this year, and we're asking for $1.5 million for next
Yes,
year?
our normal is about $1.5 million to keep current, about 34 cars, 35 cars a year, because as you can see with the list that's coming around, how many miles we put on a car a year that's coming to you. We need to have about $1.5 million every year to keep our fleet going, because we like to try to take our cars off the road at 150,000 miles. And that's what we used to do. Now we're running cars.
I've got them up to 160, 180,000.
You've got officers running emergency traffic in a vehicle that has, 180,000 miles on it. Those frames, everything wear out, and they become unsafe. So we try to, and that's what the standards say, is to pull that car off the road at 150, but we've been letting the life cycle go a little bit longer. We'd like to get back to 150,000 miles. Yes.
Had this conversation a number of times in the past, and I'm not disagreeing with any of that. My real question was, if we could get by with $1 million this year, why do we need $1.5 million next year? How many cars are you talking about buying more next year than we had this year?
I didn't get the question, sir.
Let me try to reword it.
Okay.
We've had this conversation about replacing vehicles a number of times, and I'm not in disagreement with that.
Last year was an agreement between the mayor and I, and really a lot of the commissioners, to make sure that we didn't have a tax increase last year. And so that was one of the things that we were willing to cut last year, and then knowing that hopefully this year we could go back to normal operation.
Those vehicles, when they wear out, we get 150,000 miles plus on those things, and we replace those. All of the equipment is replaced as well. So everything that we do is new, correct?
On all the new ones, yes, because we're switching over from the Crown Vic. We're still leaving that body style, and we're going to the new Explorer. So there is not anything on that vehicle that can be interchanged from the Crown Vic into the Explorer.
everything is new on the vehicle, and we're paying $50,000 for a new vehicle roundabout?
Yep.
Fully equipped and
Fully
ready to go.
equipped, 43,000 fully equipped. That's light, sirens, digital camera system, screen, everything.
Somebody help me. How many new vehicles is that? How many? 34?
34 and just a little bit of change is what Lisa Nolan said.
And the Crown Vics are also, some of them are transferred down to our SRO division for some of our civil warrants. What we can use, they're still transferred down to our transport.
Everything's hand-me-down.
It's handed down. A patrol car is still handed down. The life of it may be 10 years before we ever get disposed of it, sir.
Actually, one of the questions that I had as well. I know you've done that. You've done a great job in keeping those in service. How many cars are the ones that are out running the emergency calls? I know anybody can, but how many are out on patrol running the emergency calls that we have to make sure they get there? About 25.
Right at, it was about 83 or 84. I can get you exact on that, but that's going to be within 3 or 4 cars.
So this 34 is going to get you roughly a third.
Ma'am?
Get you roughly a third.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, excuse me, so I was told it was 87.
For the benefit of the taxpayer sitting at home watching this, could you give them your best reasons for letting all these cars be driven home with the employees at night? Because I hear that every day. You know, well, they drive their car home, they drive it back to work every day. Would you answer that for me?
The big thing, I think, is one, the citizens in the neighborhoods that these officers live in, one, get peace of mind of an officer there. It's added security. Also, just like if you remember in Katrina, all the school buses that were parked there at the school bus depot or whatever, and it flooded. Let's say if we had a tornado and they're all parked at the sheriff's office and the tornado comes around across the sheriff's office, you have officers trying to get to the sheriff's office to get back out to be out in the community, where if we have officers that live everywhere in our community and we have to respond someplace, then they can respond from their house to wherever they need to respond to, and your vehicles are kind of scattered around. So therefore, if you have a disaster, that it doesn't wipe out your entire fleet at one time. Plus the life of the car. They tell me, and this was before my time, when they used to have pool cars, a brand new car wouldn't last 6-8 months because, one, the car never got cut off, the engine never cut off, plus officers didn't take care of the cars as well because it wasn't their car. They had no ownership in it. They didn't keep it clean. They didn't do, certain things. They just passed it off to the next guy. So, the ownership in the car is a big thing that they keep up with the maintenance. They keep up with the different things on it as well.
Part of the hurricane, I can understand that. You wouldn't want them all, or a tornado. We're not likely to have a hurricane here. But on the tornado part, and I'm getting blown away, I can understand that part. But if an officer is off duty, he's not necessarily sitting with his car. He's doing other business in his life. So, he's not going to be right there to come to respond, If he's off duty, he's not going to be in his car to come right on. I don't really see the difference between him coming from wherever he was home to get his car from wherever he was to the sheriff's office to get his car. I'm not picking on you about this, but I hear these questions every so often, and I just need I want you to reply to the people at home.
I feel compelled. I was the original person back in the 90s that presented the take-home car program to Dr. Bullen. And one of the reasons we presented it that way was the longevity of the car, number one. It went from lasting from less than 1 year to 3 to 5 years or longer if you look. The other one was community safety. Community feels safer with a car in their neighborhood. I can't show you proof that that is factual happens, but you can't show me proof that it doesn't. The other side of the coin is when you talk about catastrophic, is you're talking about the officer in that community. If you have events occur and they have to drive to the sheriff's office to get the car, they might not make it to the sheriff's office. One of the storms I was in Smyrna, the last one that occurred, and it took me 4 hours to get to the sheriff's office alone through all the wreckage. But the main reason we did this was I was one of the people that drove the cars back. We'd put over 100,000 miles on a car in 1 year. And you had officers that did try to take care of it, but you have to imagine how many tire changes, oil changes, wear and tear that the car went through on top of that. And so that really was the biggest reason that came about. And the commission, we looked at leasing cars instead of purchasing, and Dr. Bullen was one of the people that helped spearhead the take-home car program for that reason. So, the biggest thing is savings on money of longevity of the car and community safety on top of that and response time. So that's the best answer I know to give you because that's what we did back then.
Thank you.
I've got a question. How many miles average are we putting on a patrol car a year? And your number may include SROs and everybody else, and some of those don't get the miles as the other, but do we know how many miles going on?
20,000 per car per year is about 2 million miles a year.
How many?
1,000 per
But
year per vehicle.
That's
a
across,
total about 2 million.
That's across the whole fleet. That includes SROs and everybody.
No, and the figures that I'm quoting you right now is patrol, warrants, transport. The 3 shifts, warrants, transport.
Oh yeah, that's for 100 cars.
Approximately, correct.
Well, yeah, she just said there's 87 on patrol or something, but and I agree with the 150,000 miles for the vehicles doing pursuit and things, but I don't see why a warrants car or a SRO or something couldn't drive those cars a little longer. We can argue, and they do. But I know you put those new patrol cars to the front line, let the others work their way back, But I know the price of cars has gone up tremendously since the Crown Vics went out of existence.
Yeah, and that's the biggest problem. And I think we got 67 cars over 140,000 miles.
Has anybody got any more of these sheets? Because there's some older cars on.
Okay, 719, office equipment, 20,000. 790, other equipment, 15,000.
Do we want to add that now? The office.
You've heard their request that we got this evening on the budget. Are there any further questions? Anything?
Just to kind of revisit.
on this part. Are there any more questions and or recommendations that anyone wants to make?
I have a question on the personnel issue. Where we've got the huge reduction in captains, did that have anything to do with the change that we made? Remember there was a payroll oversight
Sheriff requested in the current year to move a lieutenant to a captain. We did it. We budgeted it on the sheriff's side. It occurred on the jail side. So what you see is probably just to fix it. Mm-hmm.
Does that also account for the $75,000 increase in the line right below at the lieutenants? Or is that something different? Line 110? That was the payroll issue? Okay, I was thinking about the one that there was some oversight that we did when we. You remember the one I'm talking about? I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, it was an issue where Sonia had staged out, and
you're talking about the sergeants. That was sergeants. That was the sergeant line. That's not this. No.
So what is the $75,000? Is that just the one person?
Yes, it was just one person moving, and then they really didn't move. We budgeted and we had to put it back.
That's where we rent the horse barn and deal with the rent for there, and then also 357 is where the veterinarian stuff comes out for the horses as well, and John Levi's position just comes out of the regular line items. Yes, sir.
That we've had for the last several years?
Yes, sir.
And who patrols on those horses?
There are a group of guys. I can't name each and every one of them, but it's a division. I know that there's been a couple of new people, and a couple of people have rotated off over the past couple of years. And the hay is donated by Bubba Arnold Farms, no relation. He donates all the hay, and then the veterinarian services are taking on this line item.
Are they regular patrol officers?
Yes, they do that on, like whenever we do Christmas patrol at the malls, it's on the weekend, and they either earn comp time or overtime for that. On the square, just like we got coming up this weekend, they will be up here for all the different events on the square. And they will either be working overtime or comp time for those events.
Is there an evaluation that goes on as to the effectiveness of that process? Or are we just saying, well, it's a good idea?
The community is saying that they want it by,
Yeah, I'm just saying that how do we know that this...
There's no evaluation on the process of the effectiveness of it. It's just the community's support and outcry to make sure that they do see it when they are up here on the square and when they are out shopping at the malls, and they really want to see it and feel very secure. I get letters every Christmas from people that will just mail a thank you card or something to the sheriff's office thanking us for being out there and patrolling the shopping malls while they're doing their Christmas shopping.
One of the things you haven't mentioned yet, but I know for a fact that the horses have been used on several searches, both criminal manhunts and lost person type of activity. So it's not only PR, but other stuff too.
And they've also, we've sent them into just neighborhoods, kind of like a patrol car would just patrol a neighborhood. They periodically go out into the county, unincorporated the county, and they will go and just ride through neighborhoods. Also, you have, as you talk about rescues, they out at Walter Hill, a lot of rescues out there on those trails up and down the river. So they're a very effective tool for the sheriff's office.
It may show my ignorance, and I apologize if it does, but if a lot of the activities are here, like up here on the square, isn't that kind of a duplication of services as it relates to the city police department?
The inside of the square is county property, and we the sheriff's office, are responsible for the square, the inner circle of the square.
There are also, they've used the horses at sporting events that are going to be quite crowded.
I can explain one where I saw the horses in action was a Riverdale game. I was working as an SRO, and it amazes me of watching those horses. The officer was down in a crowd down at, if you know the Riverdale football field, there up at the top, the concession stands were there. There was a group of kids that were down the hill by the end zone there, and there was getting into a fight. Officers went in there to try to break it up. Kids surrounded the officers. Officers had to call for backup. John Levi and his guys went in there and saved those officers, pulled them out, jerking them up on the horses, and got them out of the situation that could have went awry very quickly, and somebody could have gotten very hurt.
If there's no more questions or recommendations for changes, we can entertain a motion on this part. See what the increase is over this year.
My hopes we have a strong recommendation from the mayor before it comes to budget committee. It was my hopes we'd have that tonight, but I've already voiced that opinion.
Okay, I think that's I would call it an addendum, and so I think we'll do this part first and then listen to that. Let's call the roll on this one. If you're ready, go ahead.
Oh, it's in the very back of your book. If you'll go to the very last page of your book.
This sheet.
We are asking for 12 new patrol officers, which would be 4 for each shift. And there's the breakdowns there for the car, equipment, training. It's 12. It was originally. Right? Is it? Oh, no. Okay. No, it's changed. It's 10. Sorry. Originally it was 12. Okay. So 10 new patrol officers. And then we're also requested 5 new dispatchers for the dispatch division. And you have those breakdowns of the cost there. We're looking for more patrol officers to make our neighborhoods safer. Our primary focus is the safety of the citizens of the county, especially in the unincorporated areas of the county where we don't have the coverage that we need. And over the next few years, we're going to be coming back asking for 10 to 12 officers each year to try to get us up to the staffing levels that we need to be by the projections that we're looking at, as we've talked in previous meetings, of the FBI statistics of where we should be in the numbers. So we figure this is where we'll start. Yes, sir.
Yes, I have a question. First of all, I fully support putting more officers out in the field. I think the county's growing. That's needed. However, I did some looking over staffing, and would you say that 3 to 5 is a normal span of control for a supervisor? Okay. We agree on that. I see some areas, for example, where we have, for example, school resource. We have a commander over a captain. Captain Hendrickson, I know, has ran school resource officers program for years very well. That's a very high-paying job. Also over civil criminal warrants, we have a major or commander level person. I really think you need to look at some of these positions where you have one person supervising one person supervising one person, and take that and put it into patrol deputies and put more manpower on the road. Here we have a major over a captain over a lieutenant. I know not very many years ago, over warrants, which is only just a handful of people, there was a lieutenant. Now we have 2 more ranking officers over that lieutenant. That's just my suggestion.
We're 24 right now. Candy's going to come up and speak to the dispatchers.
I'll address the span of control while she's coming up here. You're right. A good number would be the 1 to 5 ratio. However, if I've got a flow chart that I've prepared for you guys, and if you look down through the flow chart, my span of control for my sergeants is greatly beyond what's allowed or what they say should be. Along with the job of supervising the division, because of recent shortages, FMLA and stuff like that, I also sub at the schools. I was at Central, as a matter of fact, 2 days last week, just because we're shorthanded. Span of control for my sergeants goes 8, 10, 9, 8, 10, 8. And Sergeant Scott Cup, who we're going to talk about in a minute, I believe, took the position without pay. He supervises 2 school resource officers and 76 crossing guards. 5 of those crossing guards are substitutes. We have 71 active in the county. Back when the commission was gracious enough to give us 13 SROs to fill the county schools, so every county school would have an SRO. In that budget, I requested another supervisor to help with that, and I was not given one. So when 13 SROs were added to the SRO division, I divided those up as best I could logistically within the county. And with the addition of the school crossing guards this year, I went to the sheriff and asked if I could have another supervisor to help with the task that I was given. And he agreed to that. So I understand how it may look as far as span of control, but as far as the job goes and the things that the SROs are responsible for, and the fact that I'm out there with them as well, filling in, kind of, you know.
My comment wasn't about that. It's about the fact that we have a commander level. You could get your 2 additional sergeants and lower your ratio of SROs to supervisor. If we, why do we need to stack up? I'm saying you're top heavy. I don't know any other way to put it.
Those were the positions that were allotted to me, and that's what we've dealt. We've cut down a lot of our top heaviness since I've been in office. I've reduced a lot of lieutenants, and we ended up moving a lot of positions around, but we still have positions that are of rank for different supervisory positions. As you could say, Major Grissom, he's in the office quite a bit. He deals with a lot of paperwork and deals with command level stuff, where Captain Spence is dealing with command level stuff, but also dealing with the guys in the field. And let's say that Captain Spence is out on FMLA. Currently, we have one major who's been out on FMLA for a while. You have to have a person to fill in those positions.
Of the 34 cars that you were wanting this year, are these 10 cars in addition to that? Or, okay, so it'd be 44 cars this year.
Sheriff, how many positions were added last year? Or when was the last time positions were added?
The last positions I believe that were added were the SROs, and I believe that was 2 years ago. I think last year we just had, or did we add the captain last year? Or no, we moved that position up. Last year I don't think we didn't get any new positions last year.
So each one of the patrol deputies that we're talking about here is $112,894 every time we add one.
That's from the body coming in and paying for all equipment, everything that they need, all the training, the new vehicle, everything, yes. Each new position is going to cost us that much. Ms. McCluskey's here to talk about the communications positions.
briefly why additional dispatchers are needed?
Right now, we have 24 dispatchers. We've not had an increase in the last 15 years of dispatchers. Every other division has increased. Our main priority is officer and citizen safety. However, because we also have to do NCIC, National Crime Information Center, paperwork at the console, which means orders of protection, wanted people, missing people, stolen articles, stolen vehicles. We have to enter all of that into the state computer. Those that work the console have to do that paperwork. So therefore, it's taking away from their time and attention to 911 calls, to fire calls, to regular administrative calls. Our call volume has increased from 2011. We had 285,000 calls that we received, to 911 admin calls has dropped to 23,981. But that has to do with the county finally dividing cell phone calls to where not all cell phone calls come to the county anymore. But the majority of your cell phone calls out in the county will come to us, even if they're like inside the city limits around. We get a lot of calls around Walmart on Rutherford because they're hitting a tower out in the county. So our call volume has increased drastically for officers, for accidents with injuries. We now dispatch fire and rescue. So we have to, during the day, we operate mainly on 3 radio channels. And we staff 5 people per shift. If somebody takes a day off, that's 4 per shift. So we have 1 person on 3 radios, 1 person each on a radio, which leaves 1 person primarily to answer 5 911 lines, 4 administrative lines, 2 ring down lines, and 3 other lines that 2 are for the officers and supervisors, and 1 is still the emergency fire line that's still active.
Yeah, as I said earlier, listening to you every day, especially during the daytime, you're slammed a lot of times. You get a big wreck, you're dispatching rescue, you're dispatching patrol cars, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, anytime you have something big happens, not 1 person calls in and reports it, but at least 25 people call in and report it. And so I want to thank you for the job you do. And personally, I believe you need some help.
Our calls, same with the fire department. As you're expanding the fire department, our calls go up as well, dealing with those calls. So.
I have a question regarding the patrol folks. What kind of shift are they on? How many hours? 10 hours. No one asked me to explain this, but I've been told that if you go to 8-hour shifts, there's some personnel formula, some staffing formula that you can go through where it requires less staff to be on 8 hours versus the 10. So what's the logic on that? Or do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, ma'am, those studies are out there. Okay. We thought it'd be best to stay in 10-hour shifts for reason. If you have a guy that works 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, it's a high stress level job. Okay. We still have to get training in there sometimes, shortfalls. So the guy might work 6 days in a row instead of 5. So we're trying to avoid that as much as possible. 10 hours, it's just a good number. It's a really good number. Good coverage. It just works out better.
We just left the 12-hour shifts. We were on 12s for a very long time.
You know, 5 days in a row of high stress, you start getting fatigued, mental fatigue. And we're 4. It just works out better for safety reasons, so on and so forth.
I know you said we're the third largest. How do the other sheriff's departments across the state that are similar to us, how do they do it? Do you know?
Throughout the country, the same way. It's a wide gamut, anywhere from variations of 12-hour shifts to variations of 10-hour shifts to variations of 8-hour shifts. It just depends, and it's each department is different. So you can get all kinds of different shifts. But we are in 10-hour shifts.
It just seems like from the stress standpoint, like you're talking about, and from a staffing and coverage standpoint, that if you had the coverage 5 days a week, as opposed to, I'm assuming you're going 4 10s, right? Then you pick up an extra day of a body. So like if somebody does call out, you've got additional coverage already right there.
I'm not disagreeing at all, okay? But you also got to figure in the morale factor, okay? Family time and all that. 10-hour shifts are appealing to people when we recruit. They're appealing to people for us to keep people. So there's a lot of those kind of factors in there.
Have you done the exercise of what, at your current staffing level, if you switched to an 8-hour shift, could you run that formula and let us know what that staffing would be? Because I hear you on morale and all the other positive personal issues, but we were faced with a really tough decision, regarding the insurance and the spouses. And, we have to be driven a lot of times by finances. And so that's why I'd like to see what's the difference in that. And so...
Right, an 8-hour shift is an option that we did not pursue. Okay, so I don't have that study for you. Can I get that study? Definitely.
I'd like to see that before budget next week. That'd be great. Okay.
See what we can do for you on that.
We'll have to have that before I can make my recommendation.
I go to work right now, don't I? Any other questions, Commissioner Reed?
Sheriff, I asked you that reason about the cost of a new deputy there, a patrol deputy, and we can look at that. The salary is $35,000, and that's $35,000 to risk their life or whatever. I've got District 8. That's Rockville, Eagleville, Crescent, Midland. That's the Wild West out here, if you look that way. And I see Commissioner Jernigan out here. He's on the other side. We both have districts pretty much the same side, possibly, 100 square miles if you looked at it, somewhere in that area. That's a pretty good cost when we look at the total figure here. If I could, I'd ask for just, how about a new deputy for District 8 and go that way if I could do that, but we can't. We have to look at this whole package. I understand this because District 8, there are nights we have nobody. And then when I tell constituents that last night you had nobody out here, you had your county commissioner, that's a difficult task. And that's why I asked a while ago, how many new ones have we added and when we added them? That's why I asked you that question.
The last time we added patrol officers to patrol was 2006. That was a grant we got from the federal government, and actually I was one of those grant positions on patrol back around that time, 2005, 2006. That was the last time we added patrol officers.
Commissioners, the fact of the matter is, we've been telling you, everything's increasing, calls increasing. I had to, like you said, sometimes you're not covered. Over 11,000 times last year alone, had to pull somebody out of that zone to cover another zone because they were busy. And when you get down to the basics, we need people, whether it's 12, whether it's 40, whether it's 50 or whatever. But we do need people. Emergency calls, as everybody's saying, they've gone up. Emergency committals average 99 a month. So we're just up here. We do need people on patrol, period.
Just remember, our primary focus is the safety of the citizens of the county. And another thing to hit on, and we've talked to y'all about this before, emergency committals. A lot of people don't understand what those are, but those are a statutory duty of the sheriff. We have no way to say no to that. We have to take those people to different hospitals across the state of Tennessee. And sometimes, here lately, we've had to send 2 officers to Memphis, and then they get to Memphis and come to find out in transit, that hospital gave that bed away. So then we in turn turn around with that patient and drive all the way back to Murfreesboro to drop that patient back off in Murfreesboro's hospital for them to try to find them another bed somewhere else as we leave them, and then a few hours later could get called back to go back and pick them up, take them someplace else. So, and when you're doing that, you're taking 2 officers off patrol out of your neighborhoods to do that. You know, those calls have picked up. All of our other calls have picked up in the county. We've shown you over the years all the crime maps I've shown you. Just the numbers going up, and you all have talked about it yourself about the population going up in this county, and you know it doesn't plan on stopping anytime soon. Over the next approximately 25 years or so, this county is planning on doubling in size. And if you notice or know that they've changed the annexation laws, that means that population, instead of being annexed into the city a lot of places, is probably going to be in the county, and those responsibilities are still going to fall on the sheriff's office. Just like civil process, you know, people say, oh, that's out of the county, but we still serve a lot of civil process in each and every one of the zones here in the city. And those papers have to be, that's another primary duty of the sheriff, is serving the process of the courts. So as this community grows, all of our duties are going to grow as well. And, you know, I'm a taxpayer as well, and I get that part, that we don't want to see those duties, or we don't want to see our taxes go up, but we do have the responsibility to maintain our force and do our jobs.
Well, you all have heard the discussion, the reasoning, maybe good reasons. We heard it on the first part, the technology advances, et cetera, all this. If you take where we sit right now, if we approve this, that we would be talking about in just the sheriff's budget, $3,032,000 increase. So it's a chunk of change. So, you know, I can voice mine, as I think, you know, there's obviously give and take in places. Because doesn't it take 4 patrol to cover a section? Each 3 on a shift and 1 covering for them for the vacation, et cetera, stuff like that. I'd heard that before, so that's what I'm saying. Plus, you know, we've got included in here a raise for everybody we got now. Personally, I want to make sure we can take care of the ones we got now before we go hiring new ones, whether we need them or not. We got to, you know, look at the whole thing. And I don't think anybody wants to increase, well, let's see, roughly, say 700,000 is what a penny's worth, 7 into 30, 3 million. That's going to be roughly 5 cents on a property tax for one section of the sheriff's budget. That's what that would be. It's not counting the rest of the things and what we've got to look at. So I will ask, what is the will of the committee? We have a motion. We have a second. Motion dies for lack of second.
Took the new cars out that you have to have for your 10 positions, how much difference would that be? And I know a deputy has to have a car, so don't come back at me with that, but you've already got 30-something in your other budget.
$573,450.
10 times 43,000, because the other includes their gun and vest and all that kind of stuff. So.
I wasn't on the commission, but these other gentlemen were, but I know what you're talking about. Well, when I toured your jail a few weeks ago and come in and talked to the patrol group before they went out and asked them what they needed, their main reply was help. It wasn't money, so it made me believe they really need some help. I can see you need help on patrol, but I believe you need to be willing to work with us and not have to have 40-some-odd new cars in 1 year's budget.
The service to the citizens of the county. That's what it's all about. Yeah. It's protecting and serving the citizens and their needs.
That would be a savings if you did not include the car for the most part. You're still going to have the equipment and the training, so we would have to break that piece out. If the car averages $44,000, then you're looking at $440,000 that you'd be saving in the vehicle. There would be a couple of pieces of equipment that are purchased with the vehicle that also go with the officer. For example, the laptop, which is basically his desk, his office in the car, but we would still have to purchase those for each officer. But at 10 of those are 3,000. That'd be 30,000.
I'd like to address the issue on the cars. I think it was confusing. The new cars are for the patrol officers. Those are the guys that are doing, no disrespect to any parts of the rest of the sheriff's office, but they're the ones that are responding at those higher rates of speed to those higher incidents. We can't afford to have those cars broke down. Those cars go to patrol officers. Their cars, which are over 150, 160, 180,000 miles, get on passed down to SROs, to transport, to get utilized in a more safe manner. For safety reasons, liability, whatever, however you want to call it, if I'm that patrol officer out there, I want safe equipment. I do not want a $150,000 car that I got to respond to emergency traffic in. You, as the public, want me to get there, right? If you have an emergency, well, we'd like to get there in a safe manner. That's the reason for the cars. It sounds like we just want new cars and new equipment. We're replacing the old stuff with the new technology, cameras in it, radar units, computers, whatever it may be. If you half your guys can do the job correctly and the other half you can't, you're doing a disservice to everybody. That's the reason for the new cars.
There also
I'm not saying you don't need the new car. I'm saying take your 10 cars or whatever, how many positions that you get allotted for this right here, and take them out of the 35 cars you asked for in your budget previously.
But those 35 cars are to replace the old ones we got.
You know, you can't have everything.
Well, I understand. I'm just trying to explain it to you, the reason a new car with a new person.
Yeah, you need them.
Yes.
Take them out of the other ones, possibly.
Thank you. Gotcha.
One quick point. I just got I'm probably chief guilty on this, but I just got a text message from one of our citizens telling us to use the mics and speak up because they can't hear us on TV.
I just got a text message from one of our commissioners saying
Mr. Chairman, I know we already have a motion, I believe, that's on the floor. Do you don't? If you don't have a motion, I'd like to make one. I know I've said these things right here, and I hate that we keep trying to pass things on to the mayor to let him make the decisions, and I think we were elected by the people to make some decisions here and what we got to do. So as I've looked over this, and as I said here, there's a lot of money, right, we're talking about. So I'd like to make a motion that we fund 4 deputies and 1 communications person.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? No.
And the reason I voted no was because I'm not for buying that many new cars in 1 year's service. I was all for getting you some help because you really need some help, I think, on patrol. It's not because I didn't think you needed the help. It was just my point. I don't think you need 40-some-odd new vehicles in 1 year. I'm sorry.
As long as we're bearing our souls, then I'll make it. But I go back to the original. I think we should have looked harder and made more decisions during the main part of the budget. And that's why I voted no for these last couple of items.
I think that we need to give the officer that's going to be hired the right equipment. I know what it's like to drive an old vehicle with 140,000 miles on it. It doesn't drive very well at 90 or something miles an hour. But I still challenge you to look at your staffing structure. I still believe you're top heavy, that you need to take some of those higher level positions and create more sergeants and patrol officers out of that.
I'll just interject a little bit more here. I've been up here 13 years now, and I've watched people all these years, and I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. Sit here and vote for, I want a couple of employees here, I want a couple of, we need to get them some cars, need to get this, need to get that. Then when it comes time to set a tax rate, they say, I'm not voting for a tax increase. You've already voted for the tax increase the whole time you're voting. So, I mean, I would love to give every department head that comes up through this process everything they want. But just remember, every time you add something, we've got to fund it. And it's more or less going to be a tax increase. There's not any money in reserve to speak of to be used and stuff. So just if you vote for 4 new employees and 34 more cars and 1 more dispatch, no, that's great. But I'm going to be really hard on you if you sit there and delay, and then when it comes day to set the tax rate, you say, no, I'm not voting for that because you already have.
Okay, we'll move into the jail side, 54210. If we, for the most part, move down, unless you have any questions, but if you move into starting with overtime, 187 overtime, we are looking at 266,000. $196 in-service training, 30,000. $302 advertising. Oh, sorry, that's a zero. $320 dues and memberships, $1,200. $334 maintenance agreements, $56,120. $335 maintenance and repair service of the building, $250,000. $336 maintenance and repair and service of equipment, $50,000. $349 printing stationery and forms, $10,000. $354 transportation other than students, $25,000. $399 other contracted services, $4,132,200.
That is all Dr. Rudd, and we're under contract, right, through this year with a 3% increase or something?
Correct. This following year, we have to put it back out to bid.
$410 custodial supplies, $121,000. $411 data processing supplies, $22,500. $421 food preparation supplies, $130,000. $422 food supplies, $1,200,000.
I just say it's what our cost per meal was. Get this mic up.
Yes, we looked at the first 6 months of this fiscal year. I wanted to get you a good food cost. Came out to $1.20 a meal. So that's a very good cost. That's over 6 months. That's not accounting for inflation. This $1.2 million is a little bit less, I think, than we got this year when we had to ask for the amendments. That would allow us to average about 900 and I believe the number is 17 prisoners in the jail, and we could cover all our food costs. That's a little bit more than what we're averaging right now, but I think we wouldn't have to come back to you for any amendments or anything like that. That's $1.20 a meal, averaging a little over 900 prisoners a day in the jail, at 3 meals a day.
Food supplies, does that?
That's not the supplies are like the trays and the supplies. That's just the food cost. That's everything that they eat.
Okay, I was asking about the cost of the meal. And of course, you've got people that are preparing that too. I know some trustees work in there, but that doesn't take in the cost of the people that work there.
No, the personnel costs are already included. We have a food service staff of about 7, and they supervise 2 shifts of trustees. The males work in the morning. They prepare breakfast and lunch. They clear out for about an hour. Then the women come in, and they do dinner and do the deep cleaning in the evening. So most of the work is actually done by inmate workers and under the supervision of our staff. But all the staff costs are included in our personnel. The inmate workers' benefit is they get 2 days for every day when they get to be an inmate worker. So that helps clear our jail out a little quicker, too.
You said it was $1.20 a meal?
Yes, sir.
Average. And
That's what we average for
is that you just took that, divided it all out as an average, or is every meal cut? equal come out to that?
Well, that's the average. What we did, we took the cost for the first 6 months of this fiscal year. That's July 1 through December 31st. We took what we spent on food. I divided one into the other. I came up with $1.19.76 or something like that.
Moving along, 431, law enforcement supplies, 15,000. 435, office supplies, 15,000. 441, prisoner clothing, 111,500. 451, uniforms, 70,000.
Let's look at both of them. Okay, with what we've spent so far this year on the prisoner clothing, because it's going up quite a bit, and we've only got, right now, for this year, we've got, what, 82,000, 83,000, including expended. So, you know, we're basically at the end of the year. Are you buying them more clothing here before the end of the fiscal year? My question is why 25,000 more for next year?
Well, costs go up a little bit, of course. Our prisoner count will be higher, which means we're going to have to buy more clothing. Mattresses, which are torn up by prisoners on a regular basis, it's really a problem. We try to charge them when we can, you know, bring them back to court for tearing up our mattresses. I believe they're about $80 a piece. I think I might not be right on that, but that's the reason for that. When you have more prisoners, you have to have more mattresses. You have to have more sheets. You have to have more uniforms. Yes, sir.
That's all that is in this line.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, 452, utilities, 791,000. And that's to include of course, what we project the increase basically for the numbers that we have to date.
Again, mostly water is the increase, not electricity or gas.
Expected to go up this next year. Why? It looks like we're kind of right on budget at the 650 level for this year, and we're asking for an increase for next year. Why is that? I'm sorry.
Just amended money in for the water bill because the water bill's gone up. We just amended.
Should be, I think, 166,000.
Yes. We're hoping that the water bill will go down. That's why we are in the process of installing the push-button shower throughout the jail. Level 2's done. Level 3 is in the process of being done.
If I don't think the numbers on that include the 167,000 you amended at the start of the meeting. That was
That's correct. They do not. They don't reflect.
That was in the
They do not
amendment at the
reflect
very
the
start of the meeting.
499, other supplies and materials, 5,000. 707, building improvements, 250,000. 708, communication equipment, 10,000. 709, data processing equipment, 131,000. 710, food service equipment, 5,000. 717, maintenance equipment, 30,000. 719, It's in 732. There's a new line item for it. 719, office equipment, 15,000. And I hope on the new sheets you have, you will see 732 building purchases, which is $60,000, and that is to purchase a portable. And I'll let the major explain that.
Yes, I called, let me find his name here. I called the assistant superintendent for school at the schools for building and I forget his title. I don't want to waste your time by looking for it. Gary Clardy. Yeah, Gary Clardy. I talked to Gary Clardy and asked him how much it cost them to put a portable at a school, and he said $60,000 is what it costs, and that's for electricity. That's no plumbing. I did ask him if he had any extras. He said no. He also told me that if we could get one, and I'll explain why we're asking for one in just a second. If we get one, that he could give us the seating, give us what we need from the school system for desks and things like that. The reason we're asking for a portable building, and I've been saying this to y'all for a while, we have about 860 inmates in there right now. We have one classroom for all those inmates. You know, part of the experience that we hope to have is a chance to rehabilitate some of these people, to give them an opportunity to get a GED, to maybe take parenting classes, to maybe take classes to help them, prepare them when they get out, because some of the folks do all their time there at our jail. Our jail was built really for warehousing instead of rehabilitation. So that gives us a chance for the ones that don't get to the workhouse to have another classroom. What that would do, that would double our capacity. We can't mix men and women for obvious reasons, so our schedule is very, very tight. We get requests regularly from ministries, from organizations that want to come in and work with our inmates, and we have to tell them no because we can't schedule them in. Literally, our program room is scheduled 12 hours a day for 7 days a week. And so if we can get another classroom, we can expand our fence in the back, that will give us another chance to service our citizens who just happen to be incarcerated in our jail.
I've asked the school system for a portable since I took office. I've been working with them every year, begging for any type of portable that they could give us, and hopefully every year maybe getting one. And so finally this year I wanted to put it in our budget because I feel very strongly in these classes, and you know, we've had lots of churches throughout the county that have wanted to come in and do things. We've had CADCOR and their representative is here, has wanted to do some more classes with inmates, but we don't have the type facility to do that. And that's why I wanted to put in this portable in the budget this year to at least start that process. And we've got a perfect place for it behind the kitchen. We'll have to put some fence around it, but we think that this would be a good opportunity for us.
Okay, then ask a couple again. 707, you whipped on through that, and let's see, water softener system. How bad are your pipes? Is that why?
Yes, we have hard water. It's really hard on our pipes. You know, we have probably, I don't know, 500-600 toilets alone up in the jail, up in the tower, and it's very hard. We always have a lot. We have a lot of plumbing problems. We were told a couple years ago. I was told by our maintenance folks that we were told that if we had a water softening system, it would help us maintain our plumbing a lot better. Very, very expensive, obviously. You know, it would take us a while to recoup the cost for this, but we're asking for it because we think it would be worth it.
Also, if you remember, 2 years ago we had to replace all the boilers or the hot water heaters. It was also kind of the boiler itself. The deterioration on it was all because of the hard water that we have, and that's what Nashville Machine, they highly recommended us putting a water softener on it, and so we've been slowly stepping into that direction to extend the life. They think that if we would have had a water softener on what we used to have, we would have got a lot more life out of it than what we did, but it was based on the hard water. Also with as the Major said, talking about our plumbing, the diaphragms that are in the toilets, a lot of times they'll mess up just because of the lime buildup on them. So we have a tremendous problem with the water. Also, it's affected the pipes going up in the facility. We're in the process of talking to several plumbers. Our water pressure has been drastically affected in the facility, where if we turn the pressure up to get it all the way up to the top floor, it wants to blow out the second floor. And it's all based off of this buildup in the pipes. And if you notice what's going on in Davidson County, I don't know how old their facility was, but a lot of hard water caused a lot of problems for their facility, and they're in the process of now having to build a new facility because of all those years of neglect and decay on their water system.
Well, let's speak of the fencing. That is this for that in the building purchase to get around out back there?
No, sir. We are currently, one of the requirements of the Tennessee Correctional Institute in their inspections is that we have a fence around our entire facility. We don't have that, and so that's what that's for. The standard is that we have a fence around our entire facility, the whole property, not just the jail part, and that's what that would be for.
And last year, you saw approximately that amount of money that we bought fencing. And we've been slowly, because we want to use inmate labor to do it instead of just hiring a company. And so we've been just slowly stepping it, buying the fencing, and then the inmates will erect it and put it up. And we'll slowly go around the whole property instead of doing it an all-at-once project, which would be very expensive, kind of eating that elephant one bite at a time.
I'll ask one more. Explain your door lock system, why it needs replacing.
In 709, the MTI door lock system.
You want? Go ahead.
Well, no, Major, if you want to explain to them the main reasoning behind this, and John Frost can come up and he can explain as well, besides the fact that the system is out of date, and if, for example, we have a circuit board to go out, we can't replace that circuit board. So until what happens is it affects the entire system, and John can explain more on that.
The door panel system that we have, we bought back in 2007, is that right? 6, 7, somewhere in there. These are boards, these are basically boards that are powering the doors, that open the doors for the cells. And I believe they've discussed about how much time it would take to key the doors, right? Oh, we haven't discussed that. Okay, forgive me that. The issue with the door panel system is it's on 24/7, okay? These boards are eating up power, and at some point in time they're going to fail, just like any electronic device. Now, there's software that controls these boards that tells them to open the doors and call boxes, etc., so they can speak to the inmates. This software that we're on currently is version 2. Version 4 or 5, I can't remember which one it is right now, but version 4, I believe, is out currently. Version 2 only runs on a Windows XP environment, which you all know that XP has gone bye-bye as far as support. We can't even install it anymore on machines because it requires you to activate it through Windows. So that's why we're looking at the upgrade, mainly due to computer limitations and also the boards, with them being constantly running all the time with power, they degrade rather quickly.
And let me just explain for the folks listening. We're a 950 bed facility. On a typical floor in the tower, we might have 2 officers supervising 200 people during any shift. And so the ability to open the doors in case of an emergency or lock the doors in case of an emergency without having to do it manually is critical. It could be a life and death situation in certain circumstances. That's why this is very important to us.
If one of these boards were to go out, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the facility, we would have to start keying every door. And if you can imagine working a floor and having to key every door for every single movement, the tremendous amount of time that would take. That would probably almost double our overtime, if not quadruple it, if this was to go out. And so, as a commissioner said earlier about technology and about upgrades, it's just time, and we have to do this.
I'd also like to comment on this. The boards that they're referring to, they don't make those anymore with this company that we have. So we have to go to the new boards, which are programmed only through the new software that they have.
I would imagine another thing, if you had a problem in there and you had doors open, you'd have to get them locked, would be slow. All right.
And if we had a fire, same thing. And we as officers, we don't have any protective gear in the facility, to get in there. So we would have to get in there, open the doors, and try to get all these people out in case of a fire.
One more, and then if anybody's got anything else, they can. How many, right now, misdemeanor prisoners are in jail, and how many non-violent felony prisoners are there, and how many of those could be transferred to the Correctional Work Center?
Sheriff's looking for the exact numbers right now. We probably have, it's close to half and half. It kind of varies between felons and misdemeanants. Maybe a few more misdemeanants than felons. He'll be able to answer us here.
State inmates 204.
Let's see, it's down here.
That's females.
Our convicted ones run about 2 to 1 convicted felons, convicted misdemeanants. With 830 people, that's about 300 of them are convicted, so that leaves probably about 500 and something, waiting disposition. I would say as many as we can get over there, we would love to send over there to the workhouse. Now, some people we keep to be trustees, and when the workhouse looks at our inmates and requests them, most of the time, there's 2 reasons why they wouldn't go to the workhouse if they're eligible. One would be if they had serious medical issues, and most of the time they don't go over there because, frankly, the workhouse doesn't have 24/7 medical care. If they had 24/7 medical care, we could probably fill it up. But the issue is it would cost us taxpayers about $250,000, I believe is the number, for 24/7. I asked Rudd that the first year I was there, and that was the number he gave me to staff it up over there 24/7. The other issue is that some of them we have to keep just for our trustees. You can imagine cooking 2,700 meals a day. Keeping the lawn well, doing all this maintenance we're talking about, with our maintenance folks. So some of the people we have to keep at the jail. We can't send everybody who is eligible, but we would like to send more if we could. Yes, sir.
No state misdemeanors at all in the jail.
That's correct. The felons are the state inmates. So any sentence felon we have that we keep, we get $37 a day for that inmate, which is a little bit more than half of what it costs us to house a person. I believe that the figure's in the low 60s. I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but that's that recoups some of our taxpayer costs if we keep state inmates. But the problem is, they want to go to the state for the very reason I was talking about earlier, because they can get programs. They can learn trades. They can do things like that in the state prisons. And unfortunately, the state is pushing the costs into the counties because they can keep them here for $37 a day and not have to house them.
We could add, I think Commissioner Jordan and I came up here, that 2002 through that 2003 fiscal year, it was $35 for a state inmate. And then the governor at that time for 2004 compromised and only dropped it to 32 instead of what he was asking for. And then it went back up a few years later. So we're basically now get $2 more a day for a state prisoner than we did in 2002. So that tells you.
On line 717, maintenance equipment. Last year you'd asked for 30,000 and then amended it down to 18. We've only spent 10, and this year you're asking for 30 again. So do you have plans for that money? I didn't see anything in the explanation.
I can't answer that. I don't know what the plan is. I know that our maintenance folks do a tremendous job with what they've got to work with, but I do not know specifically. I apologize for that.
And then the line just below that, the 719 office equipment, it's a similar situation. You asked for 5,000, it was amended down to 3. We've spent 3, and you're asking for 15. Yes,
we find the need that for copiers, as we expanded booking, we had to add some copiers, scanners. As we're getting more and more into the digital age, we're finding that we need more and more scanners. I know we bought some this year to put up on the towers. What I'm trying to do, I've been trying to get our folks to, instead of walking around and handing out 20 or 30 pieces of paper daily to every stop in the jail, is to scan it and send it to us electronically. So we're really trying to do that. So we've been trying to add scanners. So that's what we would use that money for, to digitize, to help the flow of information, and frankly to record the information better, because we've got it scanned.
What about on 790? It's the electronic key control was in the explanation. What is that?
Absolutely. It's a system, and I've got the brochure right here, called KeyTrack. And as you can imagine, in a jail, and I'll pass this around if you want to look at it, in a jail, key control is very, very important. Now, right now we have a lockbox in our central control room, which is down the hall from the sheriff's office. We have it outside the jail, but that's the person that controls all the doors in our jail, except for the tower. We have to have manual keys as well in case we have a failure. And then for other things, if we have to go out to the range house, we have to go up to what we call the penthouse, the top floor of the jail. Anyway, right now we've got them all locked off in a box in Central. And when someone pulls a key, it's supposed to be recorded on a log by our officer working our Central. It's kind of like our dispatcher in the jail, if you will. We have one. We've had issues sometimes with things not getting logged in. We've had issues sometimes with things not getting returned, and we've had to track them down manually. What this system would do, it kind of looks like a vending machine, if you will, and the keys are inside glass. Each one of them has a place assigned, and for an officer to draw that key, they have to put a code in there. The machine gives them access to that particular key. And it also logs who has the key, what time they took it out, and when they bring it back. We watched a presentation from the company several months ago. We liked the system. kind of an electronic, and it'll do a couple things. It'll give us a lot better control over our keys so we know where they are. It'll free up our dispatcher, our central officer, from having to maintain that log because the log will be done electronically. So that's why we're asking for that electronic key access.
Are there questions from anybody? Okay. Do we want to act on this? We'll entertain a motion if somebody's got one.
I don't know how this is going to fly, but let me try. It looks like a lot of the costs are kind of sort of fixed, especially as it relates to compensation and benefits for our employees. Simple math, and I could be off a little bit, is $375,000 or a 2.5% increase in the budget over last year. Sound about right? And then I don't think we can do anything about feeding the prisoners either, but it looks like that's what we've spent this year, and that's another $250,000 or so. So that's about $625,000 over the budget that we have this year. And that's my recommendation that we send forward to the budget or to the mayor, is that the budget be $15,757,000. That's my motion. $757,000. $15,757.
We have a motion. We have a second. Commissioner Gorley, you take over the chairmanship for a moment? You got to.
Would you like to second a motion?
I'll second the motion that's on the table, yes.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor? Well, I guess we better call the roll on this one. Would you? Yes.
I ask a question as a member of the Budget Committee, and I hope the mayor will figure all this out before it gets to us, but where do you want that to come from? I mean, do you want to take the classroom out, or do you want to cut it out of I mean, somebody's going to need a little guidance as far as where that needs to come from, and I feel sure the mayor can handle that and bring it to budget with a recommendation, but you know,
I think
you might want to address the mayor and just tell him where
what
you
was
all think it
passed
ought to
here
come from.
was salary and benefits down through Medicare is where it works out. Plus, it was food, not the supplies, but the actual food, where the increases were.
That's actually a 4.5% increase over this year's budget at that figure, Will, and you know, I just did simple math in my head, and it may be incorrect, but that's $375,000 to take care of our employees as it relates to their increases and benefits, and $250,000 or so to feed the over this year's budget. What was this year's budget to feed the prisoners?
Over the original budget, because
That's
the
right.
amended budget is more than that.
That's right, the original budget.
But the amended budget, still, it comes in with grants that come in through the year and this type stuff that are added to it is where they get an awful lot of grants.
Commissioner, also in that, just what you said, at the beginning of the year, I think it was over $300,000 that we amended in for the grant to do the roofs and the lighting.
What's next? Special patrols in the back?
That is correct. The special patrols, which is our lake patrol. And we do have the revenue that offsets that from the Corps of Engineers.
Just explain it in a little more detail for most of us. I know, hey, we were trying to get to the sheet, some of them, and they missed what you said.
It is overtime that the Corps of Engineers reimburses the county for do the extra patrols on the boat ramps in the lake.
You heard the explanation on the special patrol. It's a continuation budget basically from last year on it. Do we have a motion?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve.
Have a motion. Do we have a second? I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any noes? Call a, okay. We'll call a roll to make so. Flip the page to the administrator of the Sex Offender Registry.
I'm going to let Ms. Nolan explain this.
This is one of those budgets where we have specific revenue that has to be spent for the purpose of the Sex Offender Registry, for the administration of it, which is why we set this out. The revenue doesn't quite cover it, but we demonstrate that we are using it for the purpose. It's one position only in this budget, a little bit of office supplies and a little bit of other charges and overtime.
And we are required to have this position, right? Yeah. Okay. So you heard the information about it. Do we have a motion? I have a motion. We have a second. A motion and a second. Call a roll, please. Yes. Last one for this evening is drug control.
Yes, and there's one slight change that is not noted on your sheets. If you will look down at 510, that's the trustees commission. If you would add $4,660, and that's per Ms. Nolan. That brings the total of that fund to $589,160. And just let us know if you have any questions.
Isn't line 187, isn't it changed?
Yes, it has.
Which one?
Overtime.
Okay. It's put there to remind you that that's what it is, but when we do the mayor's budget, it'll be shown as a transfer out. That will be, this is the money that will be coming out of the drug fund to come to the general fund to pay the overtime of the guys that work the NARC unit. There's revenue specific to the, as she said, the total is $589,000. The estimate of revenue coming into the fund is $465,000. So the shortage will bring down their fund balance.
Right at 124,000.
So what you're saying is, what, roughly 100 and how many thousand out of balance?
124,000.
Plus 70,000 is going to the to the sheriff's department for
145.
All that's going.
50,000 of it was in the current year. We started the budget with 50,000, so another 70 makes up this. The difference between that and the number is the benefits that go along with the overtime, FICA, Medicare, retirement.
Okay, any questions? And if not, we'll entertain a motion. What's the will of the committee?
Can I kind of
equipment. And we amended. We amended it to 135. Because we did start off with 25. We've amended through the year to 135. Yes. They're asking for 60. I don't remember.
Yes, sir. I was sitting in the back. I couldn't hear your question. I'm sorry.
Been yelling for everybody else to use it, and I don't use it. I apologize for that. Our original budget last year looks like the budget that we passed was $288,000, and we amended that budget up to $525,000. Basically, why? Why did we amend the budget during the year so much? And is all of that money needed again this year? It looks like that's the request, but I'm asking, why do we need? Our original budget for law enforcement equipment was 25. We increased that to 135, and it looks like we're still asking for $60,000 this year. What is that?
Referencing the law enforcement equipment, correct?
That's just one of them, yeah.
That's for updated equipment, and
That's
as
what?
you know, I'm sorry?
That's what?
It was for updated equipment. As you may know, we purchase certain things. Some of the things we purchase are actually under the confidential items. Some of those aren't acceptable to purchase with confidential items. Some of the things that we cannot purchase under confidential items are some of the body wires and things like that we use. And those things they're really expensive. Some of that equipment we use, it can be upward to $10,000, $15,000 per item that we use. So we have to ask for more money on the law enforcement equipment side to account for that, because we can't take it out of the confidential.
One other thing, Commissioner, where we've put on top this $145,000 for overtime, what is not reflected on this budget is that we did an additional $60,000 as a transfer. So the total budget for this fund, the original budget was $348,160. $348,160. Did you hear what I meant?
Which year was it?
It was last year. Current year, 14-15, current year. There's another $60,000 that's not reflected here that was in the original amended budget. It's just in a separate function, transfers out, which is where this 145 is going to go live.
So back to that 145 then for overtime that's going in. Now, some of that will come back to these people, but some of it will be used for others as well. Am I correct? Is that a way to look at it? $145,000 for overtime. That's not just for 6 people, correct?
Basically, what we've done is we look at an average of what's used around the country, and for a narcotics officer, you can anticipate anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 a year, and that should about cover his overtime and his benefits, and that can fluctuate depending on the style of cases or the type of cases we're working. We currently started working the case the end of October, 1st of November, and it utilized all the narcotics agents as well as other agents inside the sheriff's office 7 days a week, and we ended that mid-February, late February. So we were working on that case 7 days a week, and we went through some overtime. Now, we did request approximately $25,000 from the federal government, and they did reimburse us approximately $25,000 for that overtime. We felt like if we went ahead and did an average between $15,000 and $20,000 per officer. I currently have 6 active detectives inside the narcotics division, 2 task force officers. Excuse me. So it does put a lot of strain on those guys to try to work 7 days a week. So we currently do have to utilize other divisions, as well as we were able to utilize those other divisions this past year. So we want to have that overtime there to pay for those narcotics agents, as well as if we need to push that money to other divisions, if we're utilizing their personnel, we would like to do that. We would like to see the burden of that overtime paid for by the drug fund instead of being paid for by the citizens of our community. We feel like that money coming out of the drug fund is just to be paying for those officers and not the community.
So is it fair to say that you're trying to put it in here up front as opposed to coming back and amending a bunch of times? Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir. That's what of the commission and coming back and making those amendments. I'd like to ask for it up front and go from there.
The item 319 is a best estimate, correct?
$319, the confidential. Yes, sir. We just kept that the same, and we pretty well run that number, and I think we're going to come close to that.
Tell us about the motor vehicles. Is that 2 vehicles?
Yes, sir. We're needing at least 2 vehicles this year, and we think that's a fair number to ask for. If we need more, we do have vehicles that we have seized that we will auction. Some of them we're utilizing now, but we will auction them. And if we need more money from that point, we should be able to get that money back in. And at that time, if we needed more, we could ask the commission if we can have that money that we received as proceeds from auctioning those vehicles to come back into our budget. Also, if you would look here, if you look at 599, there's other charges. That was one that I had wrote in there. We use that money. We try to put that in there, and we'd gotten with the finance director last year to come up with a way to. Sometimes when we seize these vehicles, it'll be a valuable vehicle, and there may be a small amount of lien owed on that vehicle. For instance, we've currently had a vehicle that was worth about $40,000, and the lien to pay it off was about $3,000. We thought it was in our best interest to go ahead and pay that lien off, and then we'll be able to auction that vehicle and get more money coming back into our fund. Yes, it'll be ours. It'll be the county's vehicle at that point, and then it'll be ours to auction that vehicle, utilize that vehicle, then auction it, or whatever we see fit.
All right, you've heard pretty much every line item, and do we have a recommendation from the committee?
Mr. Tucker reminded me of some of the amendments that we've done in here for the law enforcement equipment. One was the $70,000 for radios.
Yes, ma'am. For radios.
$70,000 for radio. Yes, and then the other one we did another $40,000 in September. I don't remember what it was for though.
Where did that come from?
From their unassigned, they're restricted for fund balance. It came from, yes.
So that could very easily, that will happen again this year, right? That'll be coming in, but we just don't know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, no, but what I'm getting at is that this fund gets revenue coming in throughout the year, is what, and it has, history shows that it has.
Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, but our budget for this year was not 288, it was 348, so that figure is incorrect, right? The 288 is incorrect.
The 288,160 was correct for this function of 54,150. There was just another function to this budget, which was the transfers out of 60,000. The total budget for the drug fund was 348,160.
And the majority of the increase, like the 584 that's being requested, is in overtime pay and law enforcement equipment. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's pretty much the two items, right?
I would agree. And motor vehicles. But that's the same. Yeah. I mean, the cars, motor vehicles. That wasn't in the original budget, but was amended in and is requested for next year.
Lisa, just for clarification, there's no property tax dollars going to this fund?
None.
Are there? So if they can pay for a couple of cars out of here, that might offset a couple of cars over there. And this is coming out of drug fund revenue that's not coming out of the taxpayer dollars, nickel or penny or whatever. So just wanted to point that out.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve and forward on to budget. I would say forward on to budget with a positive recommendation.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Could you say that again?
$589,160. You don't want to forget the trustees commission in there.
Got a motion. We have a second. Call the roll, please. Anything else? Yeah, okay. I'll keep in mind, yeah. All right, just remember, May 18th, our next meeting. We are adjourned.